International Affairs, I would like to welcome all our participants to the inaugural session of the Conference on Kashmir, The Way Forward. I would like to request the audience to please switch their phones off. We will begin the proceedings of the conference with the recitation of the Holy Quran. I request Mr. Muhammad Kashan to recite from the Holy Book.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah. I now request Dr. Masuma Hassan, Chairperson of the Pakistan Institute of International Affairs, to deliver her address of welcome.
Justice S.A. Sarwana, Ambassador Riaz Khokhar, delegates to the conference, members of the Pakistan Institute of International Affairs, and distinguished guests. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this conference on Kashmir, the way forward, especially for finding time to be with us today, so close to the Kashmir Day events of 5 February. After the 5 August action of the Indian government with respect to the revocation of Articles 370 and 35A of the Indian Constitution, and the subsequent formal but illegal integration of Indian occupied Kashmir with the Indian Union on 31 October, there was a spate of meetings and seminars on this crisis throughout the country. But we decided to wait for a while before organizing our own conference so that the situation could acquire some degree of clarity. This conference is our attempt to make a contribution both to analyzing the impact of India's action on the region and the prospects for peace, and to keeping the Kashmir issue alive and in the public sphere. Genocide Watch has confirmed that India's actions in Kashmir fulfill all their 10 stages towards genocide. The watchdog has and called upon the United Nations and its members to warn India to refrain from committing genocide in Kashmir. But, as has been often said, genocide is not new to Kashmir. That genocide has been taking place since 1947. This time round, it is a kind of hybrid activity, leading not only to physical decimation and loss of life, but also to a complete shut away from the world, unprecedented in its brutality in recent history. For those of us who have watched and studied the unfortunate tragedy unfolding in Kashmir, it has become necessary that there should be a unified Kashmir policy in which all political forces are brought on board, both in Pakistan and in Azad Kashmir, a policy which is based on consultation and mushawarat. In the preceding years, some scholars and leaders have suggested different schemes for resolving the Kashmir issue and for finding a compromise, a practical solution, especially to mitigate the suffering of divided families along the line of control. But the issue is bound by the UN resolutions on self-determination for the people of Kashmir, and we are also bound by our own constitution. Article 257 of the Constitution of Pakistan states, when the people of the state of Jammu and Kashmir decide to accede to Pakistan, the relationship between Pakistan and that state shall be determined in accordance with the wishes of the people of that state. This article clearly implies and respects the principle of self-determination for the Kashmiri people. आप वहाँ चुप हो जाएं ज़रा, तो मैं तकरीर कर लूँ. Further, Kashmir is not only a territorial dispute between Pakistan and India, as is often, I think, wrongly stated by some analysts. It is a matter of the expression of free will by the people of Kashmir, their right to decide their own future. On this occasion, I would like to say a few words about our institute, which is the oldest think tank in Pakistan. It was established in 1947 as an independent organization devoted to study and research in international affairs. Its roots, however, go back in time to the Indian Institute of International Affairs, which was established in Delhi in British India in 1936. At the time of partition, the members of that institute, by a majority vote, decided to shift it to Karachi, which was then the capital of Pakistan. This move had the blessing of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and therefore all its movable assets, including its rich library, some of which is found here, were shifted to Karachi in August 1947. Among the founders of the institute were the most eminent citizens of our country, women and men drawn from different backgrounds, professions and religions, and we have proudly maintained this diversity. It was inaugurated in March 1951 by Prime Minister Liaquat Ali Khan, who described our institution as a bridge between policymakers and public opinion, a mission which we have always cherished and upheld. Since then, we have provided an academic shelter to people from all walks of life. We have always kept our doors open. The Institute has been addressed by presidents and heads of government, jurists, statesmen, and scholars from all over the world, and it is significant that all the early work on Kashmir was done at this institute. I welcome again all the session chairs and scholars and activists who have agreed to speak in the working sessions of the conference tomorrow, some of whom have traveled from Islamabad and Lahore. Ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, Sardar Masood Khan, President of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, was going to inaugurate this conference, but unfortunately, just as he was about to take off for Karachi, he fell very seriously sick. And therefore, it is unfortunate that he is not with us here today, but he has sent his speech, which, if everybody agrees, I will read out. Should I read it out?
Please.
He says, Honorable Dr. Masuma Hassan, Honorable Ambassador Riaz Khokhar, distinguished members of the Council of PIIA, ladies and gentlemen, I regret that I could not be with you in person, but I want to convey my deepest gratitude to Dr. Masuma Hassan for organizing today's conference on Kashmir, the way forward. The occupied Jammu and Kashmir has been under lockdown and communication blockade for the past 179 days. Some 900,000 Indian forces invaded and laid siege to the territory on August 5 and have been brutalizing its people with impunity ever since. The entire pro-freedom leadership is under detention. Thousands of young boys have been abducted by the occupation forces, and according to Indian CDS Bipin Rawat, they are being kept in concentration camps reminiscent of the concentration camps that were set up by Adolf Hitler in the last century to annihilate the Jews, Romanis, and political opponents. Women and girls of Jammu and Kashmir are being held by the BJP and RSS apparatchiks. Armed death squads of the Sangh Parivar and Bajrang Dal are prowling in Jammu, threatening Muslims. Young men are being killed every day in cordon and search operations. The entire territory is under reign of terror. The BJP RSS regime have robbed Kashmiris of their rights to permanent residence, acquisition of property, education and employment, and have made elaborate vicious plans to grab Kashmiris' land by settling Hindus from India in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In the state, we are witnessing the most serious human rights and humanitarian crisis in the world. The Genocide Watch has issued an alert warning that Indian-occupied Kashmir has entered the 8th out of 10 stages of genocide. The next 2 stages are annihilation and denial. The BJP-led Indian government went a step further and on October 31 bifurcated the state and showed Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan as part of India in the fake maps it issued. Since last February, India has also been stoking flames of war by threatening to retake Azad Kashmir by force and attacking Pakistan with nuclear weapons. These are existential threats that cannot be taken lightly. For some 80,000 families living on this side of the LOC in Azad Kashmir, 2019 has been the worst year, with 60 killed and 300 badly injured and disabled. Ceasefire violations by India continue unabated. The BJP RSS regime are pursuing this pernicious neo-fascist agenda under their doctrine of Hindutva. They believe that the whole of South Asia should belong only to Hindus and all others, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, are outsiders or intruders. Fortunately, this dark doctrine is being increasingly denounced by the world. The world reaction to India's illegal steps is mixed. The mainstream international media, world parliaments and parliamentarians, civil society activists and human rights organizations have condemned Indian actions. China, Turkey, Malaysia, Iran, Germany, Sweden and Finland, as well as the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, have openly castigated India's unlawful measures and its scorched earth policy. But most powerful states, especially Western governments, have not openly asked India to step back and lift its occupation lockdown. This has emboldened India. Most recently, however, the European Parliament has moved 6 resolutions in which its members, recalling UN Security Council resolutions on Kashmir, have called for their implementation by holding a referendum to determine the will of the Kashmiri people. These resolutions have strongly censured the BJP RSS regime for passing a discriminatory citizenship law targeting Muslims and crushing protests against the law. Europe is particularly sensitive to the analogy of the rising tide of Hindutva with Nazism and fascism of the last century that plunged it into a devastating world war. In the aftermath of August 5, Azad Kashmir and Pakistan rose to defend the rights of the besieged people of Jammu and Kashmir. The diaspora community, now numbering 10 million, helped us to make Kashmiris' right to self-determination a truly international movement. Pakistan, with the help of China, was able to mobilize the UN Security Council to hold 2 informal meetings on Kashmir after a passage of 50 years. This time round, even Indian civilian society called on the BJP RSS regime and stood up for Kashmiris. And then he makes a few suggestions. 1. The doors that have opened in the international forums, international community, and international civil society should not be closed ever. In hindsight, it was a great mistake in the past 3 decades to rely on the bilateral dialogue process, which was used by India to consolidate its occupation and demonize Pakistan and Kashmiris. Hence, from now on, involve fully the United Nations and other multilateral fora to exert pressure on India. World opinion is crucial in remolding India's imperialistic posture. 2. The international media has crafted a true, genuine, and authentic narrative on Kashmir, exposing India's falsehoods and fabrications. Kashmiri and Pakistani media persons and communicators should interface with the international media networks, both new and traditional, to shine a light on Indian atrocities and its illegal steps to alter demographic composition of the occupied part of the state, in clear violation of the 4th Geneva Convention, establishment of illegal settlements, mass killings, blindings, torture, sexual violence, enforced disappearances, and denial of rights to information and health. 3. Make appeals to the world to stress that the most urgent task is to stop impending carnage and genocide, justifying immediate intercession. 4. President Trump has once again asked to help Pakistan and India over Kashmir. His offer of mediation created much hype, but all hopes were dashed to the ground when India did not only reject this offer, but also went on to invade and annex one chunk of the disputed territory of Jammu and Kashmir. If President Trump wants to help, then the first pressing priority is to save the Kashmiris from mass killings and land grab. A political process for the resolution of the dispute can start simultaneously or later. But for any mediation to succeed, the UN Security Council resolutions on Kashmir should remain the primary framework. No process should be accepted that would exclude the UN or the Kashmiris. 5. Do not entertain offers of bilateral talks or backdoor diplomacy unless India first restores the disputed status of the state and reverses its steps taken on 5 August and 31 October last year. Sitting with Indians without this would be lethal, because that would be tantamount to acquiescence in and, in fact, endorsement of India's illegitimate actions. 6. Leverage full strength of your diaspora community to galvanize world opinion. The time is ripe for making use of the growing political, economic, and intellectual clout of the Kashmiri and Pakistani diaspora. 7. Think tanks, land policy forums like PWIA should make a transition from understanding of the phenomena of Hindutva and BJP's irredentism to developing proactive strategies that can help the state of Pakistan and the people of Jammu and Kashmir to outmaneuver India in the international realm as well as on the ground. Think tanks and policy forums can become clearing houses for information by producing credible documentaries, exhibits, and monographs on the situation in Kashmir. 8. Military power is a legitimate instrument of state power to safeguard national security and vital national interests. India is threatening to use force against Pakistan and Azad Kashmir, and in this regard, it is wargaming various military options. We too should ensure full military preparedness, both at the level of the armed forces and in fact the entire nation, for giving a fitting responses to Indian adventurism. The military pincer should work with political, diplomatic, and communication pincers. 9. Make Pakistan a strong nation economically. Kashmir cannot be won without a robust Pakistani and Azad Kashmir economy. In this regard, Karachi, being an economic engine, can play a pivotal role. 10. Focus on youth who constitute 64% or 14 million of Pakistani nation. Enable them to carry the batons for a strong Pakistan and the right to self-determination of Kashmiris. And finally, I would appeal to the audience attending the conference today to consider Jammu and Kashmir to be part of Pakistan, which was forcibly removed from the body politic of Pakistan through maneuvers, massacres, and naked aggression in October 1947. The rights of Kashmiris for self-determination and of Pakistan to complete its state are intact under international law. This was the President's speech, which unfortunately he could not deliver himself personally because he was unwell. But I have requested Justice S.A. Sarvana, who is a long-standing member of this institute, one of our most senior members. He was a judge of the Sindh High Court, known for the elegance and dignity with which he held that high office, for the fairness of his judgments. I have invited him to inaugurate this conference, and I therefore request him to make his speech.
Your Excellencies, Ambassador Riaz Khokhar, Honorable members of the Institute, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. In the absence of Sardar Masood Khan Sahab, because of his illness, the responsibility of inaugurating the council has been put on my weak shoulders. I am not an expert on geopolitics or diplomacy, but I know a little about Kashmir and my own life. In 1965, I remember there was a war between India and Pakistan, and I was in the United States studying law. And because of the war, there were a lot of discussions and debates between Indians and Pakistanis over Kashmir and the war. And in one of the debates over radio, which was for 1 hour, which lasted 2 hours and 20 minutes, one question was asked at the end, and that was, would it have made a difference if Gandhi was alive? They said they would like the Indian delegate to answer first, and the Indian delegate, Mr. Yogendra Alag, who later became a minister in the Punjab government, said yes, it would have, because Mr. Gandhi believed in Hindu-Muslim bhai chara. They said, all right, now the Pakistani delegate to answer. I said, no, it would not have made any difference. And to that the caller said, Mr. Sarvana, you've been quoting and giving references of every authority for everything you have said. What is your authority for this? So I said, I did not know this question would be asked, otherwise I would have brought an authority, but authority is myself. And that authority is that in 1947, Mr. Gandhi came to my mohalla in Delhi to preach Hindu-Muslim bhai, his usual slogan. And what happened 2 days after was a riot in which hundreds of Muslims died. And the other point is that in the Congress government, they had Vallabhbhai Patel On one side, Mr. Gandhi was teaching Hindu-Muslim bye-bye. On the other side, Vallabhbhai Patel was teaching, kill the Muslims as many as you can. And then it ended. But my statement was vindicated after 1 year, because in October 1966 I was watching public service broadcast in the USA, and there was a discussion between William Shane, an American journalist, and another journalist, in which Mr. Shane said that Gandhi admitted to him that India had the use of force, his implied use of force in Kashmir, and that was an admission by Mr. Gandhi to Mr. William R. Shane, which vindicated the statement that I had made. Be that as it may be, we have the UN resolution on plebiscite, and that is one way of deciding boundary disputes all over the world. There's a book on boundary making by Cecil Jones, which was borrowed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1965 from the Institute, which has not yet been returned because the solution has not yet been found to the boundary. Be that as it may, it gives me great pleasure and honor to inaugurate this conference, Kashmir the Way Forward, and we will have a lot of seasoned diplomats, authors, thinkers who will express their views on the subject. Thank you very much.
I request Ambassador Riaz Hussain Khokhar to deliver his keynote address. Ambassador Riaz Hussain Khokhar is a former Foreign Secretary of Pakistan and has served on various diplomatic assignments in Moscow, Stockholm, Portugal, and New Delhi. He is a senior fellow of the China-Pakistan Joint Think Tank at the National University of Science and Technology. He was appointed as High Commissioner to Bangladesh and was Pakistan's High Commissioner to India. He has served as Ambassador to the United States, Jamaica, China, and Mongolia. Ambassador Riaz Hussain Khokhar has also served as advisor to Prime Ministers Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, Benazir Bhutto, Ghulam Mustafa Jatoi, and Nawaz Sharif. Ambassador.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dr. Masuma Hassan, Justice Sarvana Sahib, ladies and gentlemen, I'm absolutely delighted to be back in this institute. I was here 2 years ago, but I owe a lot to this institute as a student and as an admirer of Masuma's very distinguished late father, who single-handedly created this wonderful institution and also contributed a lot. His book on Pakistan and the United Nations and the manner in which he collected very important documents relating to the partition and on Kashmir, I think were very useful. Before I get on to the subject, I would just like to make a few comments. Justice Saab just mentioned, I made a reference to Gandhi and Nehru. I would not like to be disrespectful, but Mahatma Gandhi, he was no saint. In September 48, he was trying to persuade Nehru to declare war on Pakistan. And October 1948, Nehru was convinced that this was one way of handling this matter. So I'm neither an admirer of Gandhi As I said, I wouldn't like to be disrespectful, nor am I an admirer of Nehru. And about Nehru, I will talk a little later. I'd like to make a few general comments. First of all, we have to see the situation in South Asia in the kind of geopolitical and geoeconomic context. The world order is in a flux. China has risen and is continuing to rise. Russia has reasserted itself. United States is not able to accept the fact that there are challenges that are coming in the way. They still believe in world domination, still believe in their superiority as the exceptional power. And there is also so much happening in this part of the world. There is a contest which is opening up in our region, in the Eurasian continent, a big power game, and USA and India are now, as they say, strategic partners. And United States and India are involved in what they call now the Indo-Pacific. They've come up with this new concept. Although Indians are not seafarers, as we all know that. Then, of course, there is a other question of China following its own policy. It's pursuing this BRI, which is both geopolitical and certainly a geoeconomic concept, and it's developing very well. So this is seen by the United States as a threat. And I think India has made a contribution in this context, that they've persuaded the United States that, we are wasting our time about Indo-Pacific, but the real threat is in South Asia. This new relationship, Pakistan-China relationship was always there, but the new developments that have taken place between these two countries, particularly CPEC, is actually a far more serious threat to not only India but also to the United States. So the United States has now started saying that CPEC is a threat to the vital interests of the United States. Not only the United States, the West. This is basically what they're saying. Then, as you see, there are all the shall we say, flashpoints are in our region. Afghanistan is still the problem. India, Pakistan itself. I'll go into a little more detail later. It's a flashpoint, and the whole of the Middle East, from Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, destroyed. And of course, Russia is beginning to show its teeth in the Middle East, and of course, Russia's occupation of Crimea didn't go down too well with the Americans. So I'm just saying that we cannot see India-Pakistan relationship and what happened in Kashmir in isolation. Two other points I want to make. In fairness to the government, I'm not a spokesman for the government, but I think it would be fair to say that a lot of people think that the government was napping when Modi made his moves. This is not really true. We were following, and informally I was associated also. I can tell you that we followed his elections very carefully, and there was genuine understanding that if this man were to return with a massive majority, then you should expect him to do things. And secondly, I would say that the government did handle the first phase of the problem, that is, the February skirmishes between India and Pakistan over the LOC, and in Kashmir, I think we handled it coolly. I would compliment the Prime Minister for that. He handled it with great dignity and I think moderation. And he did make overtures to India, and that perhaps it would be a good idea that we avoid, shall we say, exaggerating this conflict into, it can get more dangerous. So I think that's only fair to say that. Now, I don't want to go into the history and geography of Kashmir or an in-depth analysis of Indo-Pakistan relations, because I just take it for granted that this is an extremely well-informed, well-educated, group of people. So I will avoid that, but I would want to get straight away into the heart of the matter. The question is, what did Modi do? He basically abolished Article 370 and 35A. And he has been saying this. Secondly, why did he do this? And why did he do it at this time? There are several reasons. First of all, as the leader of the BJP and deeply committed RSS man, he was committed to the idea, the concept of Akhand Bharat, that's one thing, and of course Hindutva. So that was the principal factor in his mind. Secondly, he was convinced that if he does this, it will be a very popular move. After all, if you look at the composition of the Indian population, it's 80% Hindu, 11% Muslim, although they usually, Muslim figures are usually, as they say, fudged, and Sikhs and the others. So he was convinced that this would be a popular move. Thirdly, he was convinced that the international community is not with Pakistan. That if he were to make this move, there will be anemic references of concern to whatever he has done, but nothing, no heavy-handed approach will be made by the, at least the major powers. Similarly, he was convinced that OIC members, India had worked very hard with the Muslim countries, and particularly Saudi Arabia and UAE and Qatar, and that they will also not get too excited about it. Fourthly, I think he, after the February skirmish, he felt and he was convinced that Pakistan is not entirely a strong country the way he saw it. Why? He saw Pakistan as politically fractured, not cohesive, economically weak, maybe militarily strong, no doubt about that. But he felt, and as you know, he chose a timing which was close to Eid. There will be really no real reaction from Pakistan other than very, shall we say, strong statements. And there will be no real threat to India if it were to go ahead with what he was going to do. I think he also realized that Pakistan, especially financially, was in a difficult situation. And if things were to get hot between India and Pakistan, if there was a war, Pakistan would have difficulty in financing a war of that nature. And you know, in this day and age, Nobody lends you money just like that, and nobody lends you money for fighting. So I think these were the calculations in his mind. Now, frankly, there is no change in India's fundamental attitude towards Pakistan. We've had wars, we've had conflicts, tension, confrontation, and God knows how many rounds of talks between India and Pakistan over decades. But what's the end result? Frankly, I would say really not very much. In fact, zero, when it comes to our crucial issues between India and Pakistan. I'm not saying that we should not engage. I'm just saying, underlining the fact that over the years, over decades, India has just used its shall we say, weight, and has never seriously engaged with Pakistan in resolving, first of all, either management of conflicts or in conflict resolution. I think perhaps the closest that one can say was a serious round was between in 1962-63, when the Indo-Chinese conflict took place. At that time, the West got a little active, and they persuaded India and Pakistan. And there were these 6 rounds of meetings between Bhutto and Sardar Swaran Singh, but actually they really resulted in nothing. The point I'm trying to emphasize here is that there is no change in India's basic attitude towards Pakistan. If there is to be a settlement in their view, it has to be on India's terms. Now let me go back to Nehru. While he had promised not only the Kashmiris but Pakistan, the international community, they made commitments at the UN that India was committed to plebiscite. But documents have now appeared that he was lying. He was not committed to plebiscite. In fact, he even told Sheikh Abdullah, who was his friend at that time, and even his own daughter, Indira Gandhi, that he is not serious about plebiscite. So India has been taking Pakistan for a ride for a long time. I mean, this is the point I wanted to underline. Now, what has happened in Kashmir is extremely painful. I'm sure every heart in this room is weeping for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It's a military concentration camp manned by 900,000 Indian occupation forces, and almost unbelievable violation of human rights. There's no doubt about that. I think they've set a record of putting so many people in under arrest. I think they'll probably make it to the Guinness Book of Record. But the point I want to emphasize is that India calculated that Pakistan will not be able to make any moves other than, statements, etc. I think there was a certain disappointment. Now, if we see how we handled it, certainly after August 5, and as I said, that we were aware of it, and the Foreign Minister and the Prime Minister himself were writing letters to heads of states, contacting them on phone that this situation is getting out of hand and that something has to be done about it. Perhaps they could have done a little more, but I think the sheer fact that the Prime Minister did take the initiative of calling President Trump and others. Some of them were not really receptive, but the feeling was that the Western countries were not really all that concerned. Their only concern would have been if things had really escalated into war, and war into a nuclear exchange. So I think that is what is the West. Now the main thing about a movement is, I've dealt with Hurriyat. I know almost all the Hurriyat leaders. Of course, this was a great shock for them. And it was also, in fact, a greater shock for pro-Indian Kashmiri leaders like Sheikh Farooq Abdullah and his son Umar Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti. But the question is, can these people work together? It seems not, at least in my personal opinion. I wouldn't trust a man like Farooq Abdullah or Umar Abdullah or even this lady Mehbooba Mufti. Untrustworthy. On the other side, on the Hurriyat side, you have a leader who's now actually quite old. That's Gilani Saab. He's, I think, close to 95. He's very committed. Yasin Malik, Mir Waiz, and there are one or two others also. But my own feeling is that the movement has passed on. It's no longer in their hands. I mean, they're probably seen as father figures and so on and so forth. But the movement has moved on. But the real problem is that we don't know who are the leaders, who are the new upcoming young leaders, because you can see that they have challenged India's clampdown. Whenever you can see clips, and so many newspapers have written about this thing, that the people of Jammu and Kashmir are not going to accept this thing. And I think this is basically the great strategic mistake that Modi has made in Kashmir. But being I mean, a man who is so ruthless, who kills for pleasure, he will go to any lengths to ensure that his clampdown works. I think one of the other calculations that Modi had in his mind was that, these other political parties in India, Congress is now, it's really gone down. And most of these political parties will again make anemic noises just to be on record. But in actual fact, they are probably saying, all right, maybe he's done the dirty work, so we have no choice. But the main point is that Modi was convinced that the Hindu community largely, overwhelmingly supports him. There have been brave voices, no doubt about it. I mean, I would give a lot of credit to this brave woman, Arundhati Roy. She, in a very masterly article, had articulated the Kashmir issue. Perhaps, maybe I'm not so sure there are very many Pakistanis who could do that. Excellent article. And she has been very brave, and she's been making... there are others also. Some people in newspapers have also been writing about it. But generally, there has been, shall we say, a certain level of acceptance that this is done. The movement that you see now in India, frankly, it has nothing to do with Kashmir. The Citizen Act and the National Registration Act, this is a completely different thing. And it's nice to see that that there is a certain, shall we say, attack on Modi's overall political confidence. I won't say he's shaken, but he's certainly worried because this movement has gathered momentum, and at the same time, the international media has given it wide coverage, television networks have given it wide coverage. India's secularism is questioned, and quite frankly, I mean, I've served in India, and my very good friend Zamir Akram, Ambassador Zamir Akram, we've served together in India. I mean, we really didn't see that kind of secularism in India. When you really scratch them, you could really see. And what you see today is the real India. That's the point I want to emphasize. Now, way forward. First of all, the most critical point for us is we have to put our house in order. Are we politically cohesive? And you know, we all saw how the resolution on Kashmir was passed. It was passed unanimously at the end. But honestly, since I'm sure many of us watched it, I watched it myself, I was a little disappointed in the manner in which they went about it. I mean, they were chasing production orders and this order and that order and disorder, instead of a resolution that should have taken only 5 minutes for passage unanimously, took 2 days. Now, that's not a very nice thing to. So, Indians are wrong that Pakistan political polarization is very much there. So when I say we have to put our house in order, it means really politically cohesive, economically sound, certainly democratic, and of course militarily we just take it for granted that we are in good hands. But this I think is an important element. Now, what are Pakistan's options? A lot of people ask this question. I think I've been to at least half a dozen seminars where this question is often asked. What are, and of course the way forward, I mean, which is the theme of this conference. And of course we'll hear a lot tomorrow from specialists. First of all, diplomatic options. Pakistan's case on Kashmir and the case and the cause of the Kashmiri people is very strong. There's no doubt about it. Morally, politically, legally, and in every sense, it's a very strong case. But it is a victim of realpolitik. Big powers are not really interested in seeing a settlement that favors Pakistan or the people of Kashmir. Like the Palestinian issue. No, the world is not interested. I mean, the Palestinians, the Kashmiris have both suffered for over 70 years. So, our diplomatic options are there, but they are constrained. We can go to the Security Council. And I think in the last few weeks, we've made attempts. There have been what you call meetings of, Security Council consultations. But of course, these were, India and Pakistan were not there. But it seems there is a certain reluctance on the part of the big powers, and especially United States and Britain and France, who seem very reluctant to move it forward. But that option is very much there. We can go back to the Security Council, we can go back to the Human Rights Council for pinning India down on the violations of human rights, on massive violations. There are these 2 reports which are already on the table, and that the Human Rights Council can take further action provided. Now, as far as there are other options also. ICJ. The views are divided on this issue. I'm sure there are lawyers here also. And tomorrow I think we will be hearing from Bilal Sufi. Yeah, he's a very good, fine man. The division is, there's one group of lawyers who believe that Pakistan cannot go to the ICJ on the issue of Kashmir because of Indian reservations. And secondly, of course, both parties have to agree. Am I right, Zamir? Both parties have to agree to go to the. And then, of course, the third is you cannot go to the ICJ unless there is a certain level of endorsement from the Security Council. So there are hazards. But on the second issue of human rights violations, I think we can go. There are so many international conventions that allow you to approach the International Court of Justice. But our experience, of course, with ICJ has not been a very pleasant one, as far as I understand. So that opening is very much there. Then I think we can also go to the ICC, International Criminal Court, on the same issue of grave human rights violations. There's no, but this is something that, there has to be a campaign to do this thing. And as far as I understand, the campaign has not yet been launched. I mean, we are making efforts, we are making representations in capitals, our ambassadors are active, etc. But at the moment, we have not yet seen results. I think in the case of ICC, the Kashmiri community, the diaspora, they were very well organized. They have the resources. I think they should flood ICC with letters and messages about these violations in Kashmir. Maybe the court, I don't know whether it has the jurisdiction to take notice of it on its own. I'm not sure. I'm not really. Zamir? It has to take it on appeal. On an appeal. So what I'm saying is that that door is open to us. OIC. Now, I don't want to upset friends in the Middle East, but quite honestly, and I'm not in the government, but as a Pakistani, I can express my serious disappointment. OIC, they came up with very anemic, pathetic statements. But here again, we really have, shall we say, our limitations. OIC is 57 countries. And one of the silly statements, or shall we say recommendations that was made by the opposition in the parliament when this debate was taking place, was Pakistan should leave OIC. Now, I mean, really, this is the sad part, that look at the level of debate and discussion that takes place in the parliament. So, well, perhaps, I don't know what will energize the OIC. I'm not very sure. My own feeling is that important countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE and others, there is a certain kind of reluctance because they have a relationship with India, they've got investments in India, they've got India is a great major buyer of oil. There are over 5 million Indians working in these countries. So there's a relationship about which perhaps the leadership in these two countries are a little cagey. Now, SARC, again. I understand that there are some smoke signals coming from India that maybe India would relent and sort of we can think in terms of organizing a summit meeting. But I don't know how many people in this room would like to see a person like Modi who's a declared murderer the Gujarat massacre, I'm referring to that, and of course what's happening in Kashmir. And with Kashmir still under a clampdown on Pakistani soil, I wonder what the people of Jammu and Kashmir will think about it. What is Pakistan doing? Because the Kashmiris are looking at Pakistan. They see Pakistan as their only hope. And of course the international community, especially now that there have been some activity in the United States, in the Congress, there have been resolutions. In the European Union, there have been some resolutions. But those are, those are not going to deliver very much other than, and it's not having any impact on India. They're so thick-skinned about it. It's having no impact other than, okay, India is getting a bad name, but India is a big country, it's an emerging country, it's a big market. Everybody wants to sell to India, from chewing gums to, sophisticated planes. So India is not worried about this aspect. And I think outside also, the Indian diaspora is beginning to now rally to support Modi. I think I've seen some newspapers here writing about India's economy. India's economy is going down. Of course, there's no doubt about that. There are so many outstanding Indian economists who actually stated very clearly that India has been cooking its figures. So its rate of growth has come down from 6 to 4. In fact, it's less than 4 now. But we can't get any vicarious pleasure out of that, because I'm not so sure we're doing very well in this area ourselves. So I think that is something. Now the other, I said SARC is not, at least in my opinion, a great option for us. And even if he comes here, we don't know what he's going to say in his speech, and we don't know whether he would want to talk to Imran Khan on bilateral issues. I'm not sure about that. So while there is some excitement, modest excitement in Islamabad about the prospects of a summit, I'm not really happy. Then there is the option of SCO. There is a meeting at the head of state level, which is going to be in Russia in the next few. I'm just coming from Russia a few weeks ago, and I know that something is cooking. So that is a meeting where perhaps there can be some kind of an informal chat. Because I'm not sure how Modi would react to Imran, because they've been very abusive about each other. And I'm not sure that China and Russia are really in a position to bring them to. And SCO itself doesn't encourage India-Pakistan kind of friction to be brought into SCO. There isn't a formal thing against it, but I think when India and Pakistan joined SCO, I think there was an understanding that we won't bring our dirty linen and wash it in SCO. I think that's at least my understanding. Big powers. So much excitement about having met Trump. And he has now made his fourth offer of mediation. It's my understanding that nobody takes him seriously. Not the deep state in the United States, and not the think tanks, and not those people who really matter. He may raise it, and we saw what kind of engagement he's had with Modi, what kind of level of friendship he has with him. What happened in Houston is likely to happen either in Bombay or Madras or wherever he's taken. And Modi will go out of his way to embrace him. So USA as a mediator, USA is a strategic partner of India now. What kind of mediation can you expect from the United States? They can facilitate, okay, they can bring A and B together, but asking them to become mediators is frankly, at least in my opinion, not a very exciting prospect. And if at all there is going to be any movement, the American effort would be to lean on Pakistan, to accept the status quo. That's at least my assessment. UK, in my opinion, is a third-rate power now. And France has already shown its cards, and France is more interested in selling their defense equipment, so I really don't see very much hope. China is, China and India are rivals, they have issues between them. So quite honestly, I don't see prospects of mediation from any quarter. Now, one or two other aspects which I think I missed. Reactions. In India, of course, we saw their television, we saw their newspapers. They went bananas, they went berserk on whatever Modi has done in the context of Kashmir. I'm not talking about these other issues that have now surfaced in India. So, I would say the overwhelming majority of Indians have supported him. Reaction in Pakistan. Now, this is very interesting. Among the elite in Pakistan, the reaction is defeatist. What can we do? We cannot fight India. Nobody's recommending. I'm not recommending a war between India and Pakistan. And also, it's happened. What can we do? Yes, let's just get on with it. Now, this is the living rooms of Karachi, fashionable living rooms of Karachi and Lahore and Islamabad, etc., etc. They are saying, okay, let's get on with it, let's get on with trade, let's get on with people-to-people contact, etc., etc. So that's the reaction at the elite level, or political elite, let me just qualify that. Political, economic elite. At the common man's level, I think they're very upset. They want Pakistan to support as much as Pakistan can. We have to get away from this political, moral, and diplomatic. We have to do a little more. I can't spell that out because it's not fair, and I don't represent the government. But I have a feeling that the common man, especially in the villages, because they see their forefathers and lots of people who are buried in the villages as a result of the India-Pakistan wars. So there is a feeling, at least at the common man's level, that's much more has to be done. But they don't know how to persuade the government. There is no forum for a common man to really to speak his mind, and those who represent them, I'm not so sure they have the political understanding to convey even the messages to the government. War. Now, war is not a joke. It's too serious a matter. And especially between India and Pakistan. My friend Zamir is a nuclear expert, and he will tell you that there's no warning time between India and Pakistan. Virtually no warning time. And I have a feeling, this is in a lighter vein, that both India and Pakistan today do not have the scientific, technical ability to distinguish between a banana being thrown at each other and a nuclear-tipped missile. So I don't know if we have, I don't know what's coming. And I talked to some people in the Air Force and they said, "Jo bhi aayega, dekhi jayegi." So but the point I'm trying to make is that people don't understand what a nuclear war is. I think we need to educate people on this thing. We know, in this city, in other cities also, you have a bus accident. A bus accident, and we can't handle a bus accident. And we are now talking in terms of nuclear war, or the prospects of a nuclear war. So I think this is, I certainly would recommend that we don't talk about war, but we should not be afraid of it. I mean, it's not, Pakistan is not going to initiate war. If it happens, it will be India's initiative. Then the question is, how do you respond? What levels that you respond at? But what levels do you go nuclear? I mean, this is not something that I'm in a position to speak very much about. One or two other things. I'm not a back channel supporter. Back channel generally creates more misunderstanding. You know, we had this great experience when President Musharraf was in position, and he had made this offer, the 4-point formula and all that. And some of my best friends were involved in negotiating it. But what was it at the end? It was basically, basically accepting a status quo. And back channel basically means the leader on this side, the interlocutors on both, the two people who basically discuss this thing. In between India and Pakistan, it's best to involve only the formal channels. That means the foreign ministry. And I would strongly recommend that we need to strengthen it. You know, I don't know how many people here know that there were only 500 people in the entire Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and manning 76 or 78 or 80 missions abroad. Most of our missions are two-man missions, the ambassador and one third secretary or a second secretary or a first secretary. So we are really strapped for resources. India is a country which is 6 or 7 times our size. It may have an ailing economy, but it's still a $3 trillion economy. And it's moving, it will move. I'm sure even Modi, if he wants to get re-elected, will have to go in for certain reforms. It's a nuclear power, it's got an industrial base, it's got a large army, a large navy, air force, etc. And India is buying equipment like mad from many sources. USA, France, Russia, Israel. They can, because they've got the checkbook, and they can go and just sign it and get whatever they want. First of all, in our case, there are restrictions. There are all kinds of formal, informal restrictions, some maybe even sanctions, and we don't have the resources. So the gap, the conventional gap between India and Pakistan, I think is growing. Now, finally, if you recall that when he was campaigning for his election, Modi said, "What you've seen so far is a trailer," which means that they have other designs. At least in my humble opinion, they do have certain objectives in South Asia. Of course, hegemony is part of their principal, shall we say, objective, but it's not over yet. LOC is alive and kicking. Lots of heavy equipment is being used. They can use heavy equipment because they don't care who gets killed on this side. We can't. We are constrained in using heavy equipment because I think eventually it could affect the Kashmiri population too. So I think the LOC is very, very alive and threatening, and any spark can set fire to the fuel dump. Which India and Pakistan are really fuel dumps in that sense. I think the role of the media. I don't know if JJ is here.
He's coming tomorrow.
Oh, he's coming tomorrow. I think we need a strategy for the media. How do we sort of persuade our media to play a constructive role? They are playing a role, but there are, of course, pockets where there are some difficulties. Perhaps we need a strategy to persuade them to see if they can present the Kashmiri cause the way they should as Pakistanis and as those who care for Kashmir. Secondly, we need an international strategy in the media. I mean, quite frankly, some of the best coverage that has taken place in the last few weeks has been from the New York Times, from Washington Post, from Guardian, from Independent, and other newspapers also. And I must pay compliment to this Indian girl, Ayub, sorry, Rana Ayub. And I think the book that she's written on it's called the Gujarat File. It should be read. It's an eye-opener. So what I'm saying is, I don't want to. Well, you know, I know that the government of Pakistan is thinking of seeking some help from JJ. So I think he's got the capacity and the ability to come up with some kind of a strategy. But we do need a strategy. ऐसे काम नहीं चलेगा. I'm putting it very bluntly. Not this, knee-jerk reactions, action-reaction. This is not a policy. And finally, I have some difficulty. We've made statements that if India takes one step, we'll take two. So, how do we implement this policy? ये ना हो कि हम कोई steps लेके खाई में गिर जाएं. You know, I mean, this is what we should avoid. We should not make, in my opinion, this is a silly statement. You move at the same pace. Don't take initiatives that you cannot implement. क्या करेंगे आप? Trade कर लेंगे आप? Okay. People to people contact कर लेंगे. उसके बाद क्या करेंगे? क्या रास्ता दे देंगे हिंदुस्तान को सेंट्रल एशिया में जाने के लिए? And you know, we are surrounded by real problems. Not only the Indo-Pakistani tension, but Afghanistan. There are sort of cautious hopes being expressed that this probably will be resolved or solved. But I am not that optimistic personally. Afghanistan will eventually settle down only when peace is made within Afghanistan, and not made in Washington or London or Paris or in Islamabad. So ये मेरा ख्याल है कि हमें इन चीज़ों के बारे में सोचना चाहिए. Sorry, Masuma, perhaps I've taken too much time, but really I thought I'll share my personal views with you. I am very deeply committed to the Kashmir cause, personally as an individual and also as somebody who has served in India. Once in a while we are called upon for some kind of advice. So we do give a frank opinion to people who ask us. But pray for Kashmir, and we should compliment and respect the martyrs who've given their blood for Kashmir and for Pakistan, and all those who have died along the LOC in this exchange of fire between India and Pakistan. So thank you very much.
Thank you, keynote speaker. He said to me, "Why did you think of me?" So I told him I had thought of you because I think that you know the other side better than anybody else. And that is what you have shown today. The comprehensiveness, the insightfulness, and the wisdom of your talk. Thank you very much. Khadija.
I would like to request our Honorary Secretary, Dr. Tanveer Khalid, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Justice Ahmed Sarwana, Excellency Ambassador Riaz, Khokhar, Dr. Masuma Hassan, Chairperson of the Pakistan Institute of International Affairs, Excellencies, Speakers, Session Chairs, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Chairperson and members of the Council of the Pakistan Institute of International Affairs, it has been an honor for me to extend and express our heartfelt thanks for your presence here. You have helped us in forwarding the cause which is so dear to our hearts. Your presence here shows your concern about human rights violations in Kashmir, the indignity meted out to the Kashmiri brothers, and it also as an indication that we support the Kashmiri cause wholeheartedly, and we will keep on doing so all the time till it is settled. I'm thankful for all the speakers and delegates who will be giving us their input tomorrow for the way forward. I'm also thankful to all distinguished guests who have given us their time and they have given us their participation and support. I'm thankful to all those students as well who are here, and we believe who will be taking initiatives and understanding the issue as they should. So I'm thankful, and thank you very much for your presence. Tea will be served. You're requested to go to the ground floor. Tea is served as indicated. Thank you.
And of course, we should all pray. As Riaz has suggested, we should all pray.
No.